Welcome to this module on writing a compelling resume. In this module, we'll explain the key purpose of your resume in the recruitment process. We'll recommend information to include and information to leave off your resume. We'll share some key tips on formatting your resume, and we'll provide some guidance on how to write your key achievements. Throughout this module, we'll include screenshots of an example resume we've provided as part of this training series. This example will also show you the layout and formatting we recommend for your resume. Take the time now to locate this in the resources if you'd like to refer to this as we progress through the module. The main purpose of your resume is to provide the hiring manager with an overview of your skills and experience. It helps them to decide if your application is suitable to progress to the next stage. As you write your resume, you need to decide which skills and experience you want to draw most attention to. Use the key criteria you highlighted from the job ad to guide you onto how to tailor your resume to the role you're applying for. Let's start by looking at what information we recommend including in your resume. We'll go through each one of these in more detail alongside the example resume. First, make sure it includes your contact details. At a minimum, this would be your primary contact phone number and an email address. Include a career objective or career summary. This highlights why you're applying for this position and how it aligns with your work preferences or career aspirations. As you can see in this example, this only needs to be a short paragraph of 1 to 2 sentences. The main section of your resume will be your work history, sometimes known as your professional experience. Make sure your most current role is the first one listed. In this section, you need to include the name of the organisation, your role title, the dates that you held each role, the key responsibilities, and your key achievements during your time in the role. Key achievements are optional, but we highly recommend including at least one for each role you've listed. We'll show you how to include your key achievements in more detail later in this module. Include details about your key skills and strengths. This can be shown separately as highlighted in this example, but you can also include it as part of your career objective or in your work history. Also include any relevant qualifications or education that's relevant to or a requirement of the role you're applying for. If this section doesn't apply to your situation, you can just leave this section out. Use keywords from the job ad that apply to your experience to emphasize that you have the key criteria the hiring manager is looking for. To tailor your resume to the position, provide in-depth detail about your skills and experience that are a strong match to the new role. Also, limit or leave out details about your skills and experience that isn't as critical to this role. And finally, you can include a statement that you're able to provide references on request. For privacy reasons, don't include details about your referees unless you've been requested to as part of the application process. You could even leave this statement off your resume, as it's unlikely you'll be required to provide references until after the interview stage. And lastly, let's look at the best type of formatting to incorporate into your resume. A well-formatted resume is almost as important as the content. It makes it much easier for your reader to scan and gather the information they need from your application. Make sure your resume includes lots of white space. White space is the space around and between your text and paragraphs. White space helps your resume to look uncluttered and makes it much easier to read. You can increase your white space by using short paragraphs, increasing the space between each paragraph and each line of text. Using bullet points will also create more white space. Bullet points can also help you to make your information more succinct. Look at these two resumes as an example. Both have the same information, however, the one on the left has more white space, making it a much more pleasant and easier experience for your readers. Don't underestimate the benefits of including sufficient white space in your resume. Next, here are 4 key areas we recommend avoiding or leaving out of your resume. Let's explore these in more detail. First, avoid having a resume that's too long. It's best to keep your resume to a maximum of 2 to 3 pages. You can achieve this by choosing to include details that are the most relevant to the role you're applying for. If your resume is too long, your more relevant skills and experience may not stand out as prominently as they could get missed amongst less relevant information. We recommend excluding information about positions you've held more than 15 years ago. But note, this is a guide rather than a rule. It will depend on your unique career history and the role that you're applying for. If you've only had 1 or 2 roles in the last 15 years, then you may prefer to include earlier roles as part of your work history. Also, if you feel uncomfortable about leaving out part of your career history from your resume, as an alternative, you could include a career summary, similar to this example, for those roles you've had much earlier in your career. Avoid unexplained extended gaps in your resume. Hiring managers acknowledge there are lots of reasons why you were unemployed over an extended period of time. For example, you may have been caring for children, enjoying an extended holiday, undertaking formal study, or supporting a family member through illness. It's more helpful to explain extended job gaps rather than leaving these for a hiring manager to make assumptions that could be incorrect. If you were unemployed while looking for work, it's more appropriate to explain this in your resume rather than just leave a gap and hope it isn't noticed. There are a number of things to leave out of the formatting of your resume too. It's best to avoid using fancy fonts, any colours, underline, or any other advanced formatting. Even though you might consider these things will make your resume stand out, they can end up being more of a distraction and make your resume more difficult for the reader to find the information they need. Instead, it's best to stick with plain fonts, such as the examples here. Also, make sure your font size isn't too small. You can use bold or a slightly larger font for headings or information you'd like to stand out, but keep this to a minimum. When it comes to the format of your resume, adopting a less is more approach is usually your best option. Here are some examples of optional categories you could add to your resume. Apply your own judgment on whether it would be beneficial to include one or more of these items in your resume. Base your decision on the role you're applying for and your level of experience and qualifications. Most of these items are secondary to the other areas we've already covered. These will have little to no impact on if you're a good fit for a role. Instead, these can help to personalise your resume beyond just the facts about your work history and qualifications. Let's have a look at each one in detail. A list of 3 key strengths or professional skills. This information can give the hiring manager a little more insight into what you would bring to a role. It can also highlight more of your unique personal attributes that can be difficult to highlight in your career history. Like the rest of your resume, keep this information short and succinct. Your career summary on the first page of your resume. The first page of your resume is the most important. It's the first to be read, and so it creates a first impression. Because of this, it can be helpful to include a snapshot of your career history here. This indicates to the hiring manager what's to come in the detail of your career history on the following pages. If your experience is a good match for the role, it encourages them to read further into the detail. Professional memberships. If you have a professional career, you may want to add details about any professional memberships or associations you're a member of. For example, if you're an accountant, you may want to include details about your CPA membership. Professional development is something else you may like to include. If you do, make sure the development activity was recent, no more than about 3 years ago, as well as being applicable to the role you're applying for. Limit this to 1 or 2 key development activities. Interests and other appropriate information about you. While your interests don't influence or qualify you for a role, they can personalize your resume, which is difficult to do in the other sections. You can add this type of information into your resume if this is important to you. Limit this to 1 or 2 appropriate hobbies or activities. As in this example, the applicant has indicated they're a member of a local running group. In this section, you can also include information you think is important to share, which doesn't quite fit into the other areas of your resume. In this example, you can see the applicant has included details about their community work, languages spoken, computer skills, and having a current first aid certificate. Next, let's explore how to include key achievements in your resume. There are several benefits of including key achievements in your resume. Firstly, they help to demonstrate the contribution you've made in a role, compared with simply listing the role's responsibilities. Including this type of information can help to distinguish you from the other candidates, who are likely to have held roles with similar responsibilities. Key achievements also demonstrate how you've done your work rather than just what you were expected to do. Key achievements can vary depending on the type of positions you've held. Some examples of key achievements include information about how you contributed to or led a key project or initiative, how you resolved a complex problem or customer issue, a challenge you experienced in your work and the actions you took to resolve it, a time when you went over and above your role requirements. Including at least one similar example for each role gives the hiring manager more insight into your professional success. A helpful structure for writing your key achievements in your resume is to firstly describe the situation. That is, what you had to do and why. Then explain the key actions you took in response, before finally describing the outcomes that resulted from your actions. Include achievements that are most applicable to the role you're applying for. Keep the details brief, including just enough information for the hiring manager to get a general understanding of what you've achieved. This structure is similar to how you would answer a behavioural style question in an interview. We'll explain this in more detail in the interview module. We've included examples of key achievements in the example resume. And importantly, don't forget to proofread your resume to ensure it's free from spelling or grammatical errors. Don't just rely on your computer spell check function, as this won't pick up everything. Maybe ask a family member or a friend to look over your resume as an extra set of eyes to proofread this for you. You'll be able to see examples of all the sections we discussed in the sample resume we've included as part of this training. We encourage you to review this resume again to support your learning. Keep in mind, the sample resume is a guide rather than exactly how your resume should look. You need to apply your own judgment on what's best to include or leave out of your own resume. You'll find lots of other examples of well-written resumes through doing an internet search. Particularly look out for those published by job board websites such as Seek or recruitment agencies. We trust this module has helped to guide you on constructive ways to write your professional resume. Review the templates and other resources we've provided as part of this training series for extra support. In our next module, we're going to discuss how to create or write a great cover letter that complements your resume.